Monarch is their legacy.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, Episode 5. This episode is packed, so let's get right to it. We open at the Monarch command post in Alaska, and it's very similar to the radio station we saw in the last episode. We go inside to find Kate, who is being held by Monarch. Now, this isn't the first time we've seen Monarch detain people. They did it in Godzilla and also at the end of Kong. Honestly, Kate reminds me a lot of Mason in this scene.
I promise I won't tell the Russians.
I promise I will tell the Russians.
You think you can intimidate me with all this secret Black Ops bullshit?
We see monitors that have camera feeds of the cells as well as a map. Now look what's highlighted. This second circle is around Utah, where Barnes was posted in the last episode. We get a bit of Kentaro freaking out, and then we go to the opening credits. Now I'm not going to break it down shot by shot. You can see that in our first breakdown video, but I will point out some new things that we found. This opening map makes a reappearance this week in Hiroshi's San Francisco office. The shot of the key turning is from when Kate unlocks the door to her father's office. And this week's episode is directed by Merzy Almas, who's also directed episodes of Jessica Jones and Legends of Tomorrow. We cut to May, who's still on a stretcher.
I'm sick.
So Duvall tries to talk to her, but she says,
"Shouldn't you be off chasing big, scary monsters or something?"
And that's telling, because that's Shaw's whole problem with Monarch. He feels like they chase down unimportant threats and don't bother with the monsters. Duvall says,
They've never seen anything like it.
which echoes back to what Shaw said last week.
It's a Titan, May. They're like snowflakes. Never came across two that were the same.
And then we finally find out about May's passports. It turns out that one is hers and the other is her sister's.
Should we call it Titanus, May, or Lyra Mateo?
But are they sisters? They don't even have the same last name, and Duvall says it doesn't look like her.
Well, I think they are sisters, because I can't think of any reason why May would lie to Kate, especially when she was dying.
If anything happens to me, get in touch with my sister.
As far as last names, that could be a number of things. There could be half-sisters who have different dads. May could have changed her last name, or Lyra could have gotten married. And in terms of looking like her, there's a big difference between looking related to someone versus being identical to someone. Think of the Hemsworth brothers. They look like siblings, but they aren't exactly the same.
But why does she have her passport at all?
Well, I'll get to that in just a second.
Oh, no. What's wrong with you? Have you ever felt like you lived in a horrifying state between existence and death?
You talking about being a puppet?
No, well, yeah, but I feel terrible. I partied way too hard last night.
Oh, my friend, I got a good tip for you and for all of you too. With the holidays and especially New Year's coming up, we're all going to be going out, we're all going to be having a good time, and I have the absolute best way for you to prevent a rough morning after you go out drinking. It is called Zbiotics. They're our partner for this video. Zbiotics is a pre-alcohol probiotic that's actually the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Like, Zbiotics really works. I have a regular subscription that brings it to my house every single month. So guys, here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. Now, it is this byproduct and not dehydration that's to blame for your rough next day. Zbiotics produces an enzyme to break that byproduct down. It's designed to work just like your liver does, but it's in your gut where you need it the most. So you take Zbiotics before you start drinking, and of course, drink responsibly and get a good night's sleep. Like, I'm not kidding about this. I love Zbiotics, and it also makes for a great gift. Last month, I went to a wedding and I just passed them around to people for the after party. So this holiday season, give your family and friends the gift of a better tomorrow with Zbiotics. I highly recommend you give Zbiotics a try. Go to zbiotics.com/ScreenCrush or scan the QR code on the screen right now to get 15% off your first order when you use the code ScreenCrush at checkout. Zbiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you are unsatisfied for any reason, they're going to refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/ScreenCrush and use the code ScreenCrush at checkout to get 15% off. Thanks again, Zbiotics, for sponsoring this video. Now, back to what I was saying.
All right, next time I'm gonna use a Zbiotic.
Okay, back to Monarch. Duvall gives May her card and then heads back to the observation room. As Tim, Duvall, and Verdugo discuss what to do with them, we get this really interesting exchange.
Monarch is their legacy.
Legacy hasn't served people well around here, has it? You end up dead.
Right now, we know two people are dead, Keiko and Bill Randa. They both die on Monarch missions, but their deaths aren't shady. They hunt giant monsters and, well, the monsters got them. But Monarch thinks that Hiroshi Randa died. This line makes me think that Hiroshi went to Alaska on his own instead of for Monarch. We cut to Kentaro, Kate, and May's release. Now notice that May only gets her own passport, which is just a standard American passport. I think May took her sister's passport because it was an official passport. An official passport is a passport issued to a US government employee or military personnel. May could have used it to enter Japan more easily after G-Day. Tim goes on this little rant about how they're lucky to be alive only to get into the car with Duvall and ask,
How was that?
the purpose of this rant was twofold. One, they want Kentaro and Kate to keep searching for their father. If they find him, then Monarch finds him too. And two, they want to convince May to partner with Duvall. Look at how it flashes to May's face when she says,
So take your shiny new passports and go home.
and when she contacts Duvall at the end of the episode, she says,
I want to go home.
it's revealed that they're in Nome, Alaska. Remember, they were flying to Utqiagvik in episode 3. Utqiagvik and Nome are nearly 4 hours apart by plane, which means they either went really far out looking for Hiroshi or Monarch took them somewhere very remote. Kentaro is shocked when May wants to go back to Tokyo.
You're leaving?
But to be honest, I'm not sure why. First of all, May has a lot less skin in the game than the Randa children. After all, Hiroshi isn't her father. She's almost died multiple times for a man she doesn't even know. And secondly, she almost died. They all came close to death when the monster attacked, but May was closest to freezing to death. It makes sense that she would just want this whole thing to be over.
Get me home.
When Kate tries to convince May to stay, she says this heartbreaking line.
Backup family, backup office.
Now, I've said a few times that Kate got a worse version of her father than Kentaro did. Last week's episode showed Hiroshi wasn't there for either of his children, but I think he was more neglectful of Kate. From Kate's perspective, she should be the original and Kentaro should be the other child, but she refers to herself as the backup. Now, I think this has to be a reflection of how her dad treated her. We switch back to Lee Shaw, who is still held by Monarch, and also, he's the only captive who's cuffed. This Super 8 film starts playing, and for a moment, he's literally in the shadow of himself. Bill Randa gets into frame, and then they take a photo together, and this is one of the photos on Monarch Unlocked. Also, notice the blazer that Keiko is wearing. This is from the first day they met. They're probably all so happy because they survived that monster attack. Deputy Director Verduga comes in and says,
The Randa boy had that film on him.
this was the file that Kentaro found labeled Philippines 52. He must have kept it himself when they tossed the files. Shaw has major beef with Monarch because he thinks they do
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Now remember, Shaw's the one who helped the organization to expand. Part of the reason he did that is because he wanted the organization to make a difference. So, seeing a useless Monarch is particularly offensive to him. Then Shaw says,
They don't know anything. I made sure of that.
now this explains a lot. Remember the conversation they had on the ferry?
You could have warned people, try to stop it.
Really think anything on Earth could have stopped it? Stop that?
I thought it was weird how flippant Shaw was. It turned out that he didn't want to drag them into more mess. And then Director Verduga says,
You ever think Hiroshi had a reason for not telling his kids what he did here?
now up until now, I wasn't sure if this was an FBI special agent situation where he wasn't allowed to tell his family, but this reveals to us that he chose not to tell them. I wonder if he felt pressured by his own father, Bill, to join, and that's why he didn't tell his kids. Or perhaps he just thought that it was too dangerous. And once again, we get a question about Lee Shaw's age.
So he should be what, 90 at least? How does he look like that?
I need to know, I need to know, I need to know.
Yeah, me too, buddy, but the best we get is this.
There's rumors of a mission gone bad.
Mission Gone Bad sounds to me like he got stranded at Skull Island and stopped aging temporarily because of the interference that the Titans gave off. We switch back to San Francisco, which is in ruins since the Godzilla attack. The Golden Gate Bridge has collapsed and you can see this path to destruction on the port. Later, this whole area gets filled with vegetation, but at this point, it is still a complete ruin. Oakland Airport also bears its own signs of the destruction. There are still FEMA workers milling about, even though it's been a year since the initial attack. On the information board, you can see parts of San Francisco that are still blocked off by military order. And there's a Godzilla preparedness announcement behind Kate. Finally, there's this commercial.
Offering titanium forged subterranean safety from our violent, unstable world.
Remember in episode 1 when the taxi driver said,
Musa prep. Big business now.
this is one example and the industry only grows. By Godzilla vs. Kong, Apex Industry will do whatever it takes to profit off these monsters. And then this happens.
Well, who wants to live in a custom bunker?
Tech bros. Only ones who can afford it.
And man, does that hit close to home. First of all, San Francisco is one of the most expensive cities in the world. The average rent for a one-bedroom apartment is more than $3,000 a month. So truly, not many people can afford to live there. And secondly, tech billionaires are weirdly into bunkers. There are entire companies like Vivos dedicated to building luxury bunkers. Douglas Rushkoff even wrote a book about it called Survival of the Richest: Escape Fantasies of Tech Billionaires. Go check it out, it is a wild read. We get back to the FEMA survival camp where we get this heartbreaking image of hand-drawn missing posters along the fence, which reminded me a lot of the missing posters around New York after 9/11. It's both sad and hopeful to see this neighborhood. On one hand, it's devastating that all these people lost their homes and many of them lost their loved ones, but it's heartwarming to see how they're trying to rebuild. There are kids playing in the street, little gardens, and even a daycare center with a rainbow on it. Remember, in the book of Genesis, after God flooded the earth, he sent a rainbow to promise he would never flood the earth again. Since then, rainbows have always been seen as a symbol of recovering from a disaster. Kentaro asks if people tried to do tours of the wreckage, and Kate says,
Trauma tourists getting off on the disaster porn or trying to prove it was all the government conspiracy.
Now this seems like a reference to the 9/11 conspiracy theorists who claimed it was an inside job. And while it's hard to hear some of these references, it makes sense. For Japan, Godzilla represented the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That's their national tragedy. The US's national tragedy is 9/11. We finally meet Kate's mom, Caroline, and Kate is forced to break the news.
My husband used to travel
Mom,
there
this
a
is
lot.
Kentaro Randa.
When they go inside, there are family photos of them everywhere, on the fridge, hanging up, and on the bookshelf. This mirrors what Kate saw when she walked into Kentaro's apartment in Tokyo. Kentaro and May go to Kate's room and look at how empty it is. Now there's two reasons for this. One is that Kate lost a lot when the attack happened. Everything she salvaged is in one box. This box we see on the dresser. But the other reason is that she was severely depressed and couldn't see the point in decorating her own space. When Kate asks her mother why she's so calm, she says,
What do you expect me to do? Have a hysterical breakdown?
which mirrors what Emiko said to Kentaro.
怒ってないの?
怒ってるの健太郎でしょ?
Hiroshi had a type, I guess. In this scene, we get the full scope of Kate's depression.
And I wasn't going to sit around and watch my daughter kill herself.
We knew she was struggling with survivor's guilt and PTSD following the attack, but it wasn't clear how badly it affected her. In all honesty, she still seems very flippant with her life.
They're arresting looters every day. Some of them even get shot.
So they're getting in, we'll go in with them.
We switch back to Shaw, who's still talking to director Verduga, and she says,
You went decades between escape attempts.
from the documents in Hiroshi's office, we know the nursing home was established in 1974, a year after the Kong expedition. However, I think he may have been there since its founding. Shaw also says,
what if Godzilla had lost?
And this is actually a great reminder that Godzilla wasn't the biggest threat that day. The parasitic Mutos were actually the biggest threat. They were much more destructive and laid eggs to unleash their parasitic spawn on the planet. The Godzilla Muto fight destroyed San Francisco, but Godzilla was ultimately the savior because he neutralized them and then went back into the ocean. We cut back to San Francisco where May, Kate, and Kentaro are in the red zone. Everything's frozen in time, almost like a city after a nuclear disaster.
Speaking of nuclear disaster, shouldn't it be like super radioactive?
Yes. Yeah, I don't know why nobody's concerned about that. There's even the radioactive symbol on this truck. I don't know, guys. I don't know.
Problem is there is no radiation.
Now they are walking to the worst area of the attack, and we saw most of this in the Godzilla movie. Look at these two shots. We flash back to San Francisco 2 days before the attack. The coffee shop is named Ground Zero, tipping us off to the fact that this will be ground zero for the attack. We also find out that Kate had a girlfriend named Danny who probably died. And in a perfectly tragic fashion, she was just about to move in with her. If you look at the key she gives her, you'll notice that it's the same red-capped key that is still on her keychain. We move to 1 day before the Godzilla attack when we see Kate's classroom. On her wall, she has pictures of different female scientists such as Mae Jemison, Jocelyn Bell Burnell, and Marie Curie. Her students are watching the video of the Muto attack in Hawaii. Now remember, the Mutos were terrorizing the world for about 3 days prior to the San Francisco attack, but they didn't have enough time to fully evacuate the city. I also love the details in this scene, like when her student asks if the Mutos are coming to San Francisco, you immediately hear this clicking noise the Mutos made.
Are they coming here next?
Now all these memories are from Kate's perspective, and because human memory is weird and she's also traumatized, they're all blending together. Now back in 2015, they make their way to Kate's old school and she immediately starts having flashbacks. As they hide from the military, she flashes back to the day of the Godzilla attack with the military planes flying overhead, the same planes we see here. As she ushers her students into the bus, she tells Danny,
The mayor said to shelter in the BART stations. Yeah, and we will if the parents don't show up.
Which is where Elle Brody sheltered in Godzilla. Once they escape the military, they make their way through the main attack area. area. See these giant red spheres on top of the cars? Those are actually the hanging lanterns we see when Ford Brody destroys the Muto eggs in Godzilla. When they have to run from the military again, they hide in Powell Station, and I think this is the exact station Elle Brody was in. Look at the caved roof. It's the same way her station collapsed. Underground, Kate starts to panic again. May works her through the panic attack, but she has another flashback. We cut to her shoes and clothes strewn messily on the floor, and if you look at her keys, the red key is still there. It turns out that Kate was cheating on Danny, the very thing she was so angry at her father about. Not only that, but she also left Danny at the school to chaperone the kids on the bus.
Oh man, she's gotta have like survivor's guilt to the max.
She definitely does, especially because the last thing Danny ever said to her was,
"We were good, you don't want good."
There's absolutely no excuse for cheating, but Kate's never had a good relationship modeled for her. Think of what her mom says.
But I didn't want to know the truth. I liked having a part-time husband.
Kate never asked to have a part-time father. She feels unworthy of love, so she self-sabotages, not realizing the world was about to collapse. When she comes to, she says,
"I don't deserve this."
She thinks she's unworthy of May's kindness, even in a situation like this. Also, I'm calling it now, these two are gonna kiss. May says,
"The only way out is through."
A reference to the title of this week's episode, The Way Out. Now she's talking about emotional pain, but then Kentaro pops up with a literal way out.
Just follow the cats.
Man, I love cats.
Offended?
I can love both. You have cat siblings.
Those are cats? I thought those weird looking dogs.
Anyways, they end up right in front of the iconic Transamerica Pyramid, the building where Hiroshi worked. When they get to his office, you can see pictures of Kate and Caroline on his desk, just like he had photos of Kentaro and Amiko on his desk in his Tokyo office. When Kentaro shines a light on his desk, we see Hiroshi's signature pencil shavings, but we also see this photo. It's upside down, but when you rotate it, it looks really similar to this photo we see on Monarch Unlocked. Kentaro and Kate see the same map from his Tokyo office, but this time there's no safe behind it. However, they're able to crack how these two maps connect. I love that it required both of their skill sets here. Now, because Kate's a science teacher, she knew it wasn't actually satellite paths.
The orbital arcs of satellites are sine waves. These pathways, they're something else.
But Kentaro's knowledge of projections from his art show is how they put the pieces together.
My first art installation was about projected images. How putting one image on another can reveal something completely new.
The points all correlate to Titans, and May realizes the next point is Africa. Now, there's a few different Titans in Africa, but remember when May was reading off the coordinates in episode 3?
These are geo-coordinates from all over the world. I mean, Mexico, Asian steppes, North Africa.
I think they're either going after Sekhmet in Cairo or Baphomet in Morocco. They make it back to Caroline just in time with everything they need, and then they get back to the FEMA relocation area. Now, of course, just when it seems like it's all going well, we get this stinger.
I want to go home. Tell me what I need to do.
Now, last week, I was sure that May was secretly working with Monarch. Turns out we were actually psychic because she's working with them now, and I can't wait to see how this unravels. So guys, that's everything we caught this week. Big shout out to the writer of this video, Ms. Brianna McLarty. You can catch her socials below. Is there anything that we missed? Let us know in the comments or at either of us on our socials. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.